We live in an era marked by information overload, the speed of communication, and the constant pressure to meet external expectations. The modern world demands a lot from us. Non-stop productivity, immediate success, and alignment with standards that seem to be constantly changing. This scenario generates anxiety, stress, and a feeling of disconnection from ourselves. Inner peace, however desired, seems distant, almost unattainable, when we find ourselves in the midst of this whirlwind. But what if there were a way to find serenity, even in times of chaos? The answer may lie in something that dates back to ancient times. Stoicism, this philosophy, which dates back to ancient Greece, teaches that no matter what happens around us, we can cultivate lasting peace through our own mind. Stoicism doesn't promise that the world will be free of hardship, but it does offer tools to help us face those hardships with calm, resilience, and clarity. The concept of inner peace in Stoicism goes beyond the simple absence of problems. It is about finding emotional and mental balance, even in the midst of a storm. And that is exactly what we will explore in this video. How we can apply Stoic principles to find calm in the midst of chaos. We will understand how Stoicism teaches us to deal with what is beyond our control, how to accept the impermanence of life, and how to build a daily practice that leads us to a more serene state of existence. Throughout this video, we'll explore key Stoic concepts like the dichotomy of control, acceptance of fate, and amor fati. From there, we'll offer simple yet powerful practices that you can incorporate into your life to begin cultivating your own inner peace. Are you ready to begin this journey? Before we take the first step, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Let's get started. Stoicism offers a powerful and pragmatic view of control, something that, when understood correctly, can transform the way we deal with life's challenges. At the heart of this philosophy is the concept of the dichotomy of control, the idea that there are two categories of things in life: those over which we have control and those which are beyond our control. This distinction is essential for inner peace, as it helps us focus our energy on what we can change, and not on what is beyond our influence. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, said that it is not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. In other words, it is not what happens to us that causes us suffering, but our reaction to what happens. If we can separate what we can control from what we cannot, we will be less affected by external circumstances and, consequently, more serene. For example, we can control our actions, our thoughts, and our choices. If a coworker acts rudely, we cannot control their behavior, but we can control our response to the situation. We can choose not to react with anger, and instead to act with understanding or simply ignore the provocation. When we understand that we have power over our responses, but not over the behavior of others, we feel a significant sense of relief. This is the first step toward building inner peace. Furthermore, the concept of control in Stoicism is also related to acceptance. Instead of fighting adversity, Stoics focus on responding wisely and courageously. Control does not mean eliminating problems, but rather how we deal with them. The weather may be unstable, a project may not go as planned, and people may act unfairly. However, we always have control over how we choose to respond to all of these things. Now that we understand the theory behind the dichotomy of control, it's time to apply it in a practical way to our daily lives. We often find ourselves in situations that cause us anxiety or frustration because we are trying to control things that are beyond our reach. True wisdom lies in recognizing what we can control and accepting what we cannot. But how do we do this in our daily lives when external demands seem to constantly challenge our inner peace? A simple exercise that can help is to list the situations in your life and separate them into two categories: what you can control and what you can't. It could be something as trivial as traffic or criticism at work. The important thing here is to recognize that although traffic cannot be changed, the way we react to it, our irritation, our stress, can be controlled. Practical example: you are in a work meeting and a colleague criticizes your proposal. This criticism may or may not be constructive, but one thing is certain. Your colleague's attitude is beyond your control. What you can control is your reaction. You can choose to be offended, or you can decide to listen to the criticism, reflect on it, and improve your work. The key here is to not let other people's opinions upset your emotional balance. By focusing on what is within your control, you reduce the anxiety that often arises in these situations. Another practical example. Imagine that you have a big project to deliver, and no matter how hard you work, it doesn't turn out exactly as planned. It's easy to get frustrated with the results and even blame yourself. However, you can control your effort, your dedication, and your search for improvement. The result, however, may depend on external factors, such as the response of other people or the weather. The Stoic does not worry about the result, but is proud of the process because it is under his control. This daily practice of discerning what we can control and what we must accept helps us live more lightly. Ultimately, external circumstances are unpredictable and often challenging, but how we choose to respond to them is what defines our inner peace. Impermanence is one of the most universal laws of life. Everything that is born, grows, and transforms is destined to pass away. This concept is fundamental to Stoicism and many other philosophical and spiritual traditions. For Stoics, accepting impermanence does not mean resigning oneself to suffering or failure, but rather understanding that everything that happens, good or bad, is temporary. This acceptance brings a profound sense of freedom and relief, because by recognizing that moments of crisis or suffering will also pass, we begin to view them differently. Stoic philosophy invites us to constantly reflect on the transience of life. Marcus Aurelius, for example, wrote in his diaries, "Life is short and the things that afflict us are fleeting. Remember, nothing lasts forever." This type of reflection does not serve to create a feeling of hopelessness, but to help us put our difficulties into perspective and find peace even in the face of temporary adversity. When we face difficult times, such as a loss, a failure, or a situation beyond our control, our suffering is often heightened because we resist change or the impermanence of things. We try to hold on to what is falling apart or despair at the idea that anything can change. But by embracing the transience, we can see that change is natural and often necessary. The loss of a job can open the door to new opportunities. A broken relationship can prepare us for something more aligned with who we truly are. Applying the acceptance of impermanence allows us to live more peacefully, without the constant fear that good things will disappear or that hardships will last forever. Understanding that this too shall pass is one of the greatest sources of serenity we can cultivate. Journaling, or the practice of writing down daily reflections, is an incredibly powerful tool in Stoicism. This practice not only organizes our thoughts, but also allows us to review our emotions, actions, and attitudes toward everyday situations. When we apply journaling in a Stoic way, it becomes a means of self-analysis, self-understanding, and most importantly, self-transformation. Stoics such as Marcus Aurelius and Seneca often wrote for themselves, using writing as a form of reflection and personal growth. What is Stoic journaling? Essentially, it is a way of writing to reflect on what happened during the day, the situations we encountered, and most importantly, how we dealt with them. Writing becomes a way to observe our thoughts and actions in an unbiased way, without the filter of immediate emotion. This helps us identify patterns, evaluate our reactions, and thus improve the way we deal with adversity. One of the most effective ways to use journaling is to ask yourself 3 simple questions at the end of the day. 1. What happened today that I couldn't control? Here, you can reflect on situations that were beyond your control, such as other people's reactions or unexpected changes. 2. What happened today that I could control? This part of the exercise focuses on what you did, how you acted and reacted. Here, it is essential to be honest with yourself, acknowledging both your victories and your failures. 3. What did I learn from this? Reflecting on daily learning helps you internalize your lessons and seek continuous improvement. Even the most difficult challenges bring valuable lessons. In addition to these questions, Another effective technique is to practice writing about your emotions during times of stress or anxiety. The simple act of writing can help you externalize and process your feelings, which often relieves your mind and reduces the emotional burden. Journaling is not just a tool to organize your mind, but also a way to build a daily habit of self-awareness and resilience. By reflecting on what we can control and what we must accept, we can learn to maintain our inner peace, even in the midst of chaos. In times of crisis or hardship, it is common for us to feel overwhelmed, as if the suffering were endless. However, Stoicism teaches us a simple but profoundly transformative lesson: this too shall pass. This phrase, which seems simple, carries immense power. It reminds us that no matter what adversities we face, they are temporary. Suffering, pain, and even extremely difficult situations, no matter how challenging they may be, have an end. This Stoic perspective is one of the pillars for cultivating inner peace, because it helps us deal with life's ups and downs with greater ease and resilience. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often wrote about the transitory nature of life, telling himself that nothing is permanent, neither good nor bad times. He said, "Remember, everything you see around you, the events and emotions, are but fragments of a greater and temporary reality. They will pass." When we internalize this idea, we begin to realize that suffering does not need to be faced with despair, but as something that, like all things, dissolves with time. This practice of reflecting on the transience of situations is powerful because it allows us to deal with stress and anxiety more effectively. When we are facing challenges, whether at work, in our health, or in our relationships, by remembering that this too shall pass, we can take a step back and prevent anguish from consuming us. This reflection gives us the perspective we need to focus on the actions we can take now, without weighing ourselves down with the weight of the future or the eternity of the problem. By adopting this philosophy into our daily lives, we begin to realize that even in the face of adversity, we are capable of maintaining our peace. Now, to face the chaos of modern life even more effectively, we need to learn to bring our attention to the present moment and cultivate a state of mindfulness, something deeply connected to Stoicism. Practicing mindfulness and conscious breathing is essential for emotional balance and cultivating inner peace, especially in times of chaos. In Stoicism, philosophers teach us that one of the best ways to deal with external turbulence is to cultivate internal serenity. Marcus Aurelius, for example, said that the mind is like a city. If it is not guarded and protected, any external influence can destroy its tranquility. Conscious breathing and mindfulness are powerful tools for protecting the mind. Mindfulness is the practice of bringing our attention to the present moment, without judgment, without worrying about the past or the future. In Stoicism, this translates into the practice of being fully aware of our actions and emotions, accepting what we feel without resistance. Epictetus, one of the main Stoic philosophers, taught that our reactions are more important than the situations themselves. By practicing mindfulness, we are training our mind to be more observant and less reactive, creating a space of peace in the midst of chaos. One of the simplest ways to practice mindfulness is through conscious breathing. When we feel anxious or overwhelmed, it can be easy to get lost in our thoughts. Breathing, however, is an immediate anchor that brings us back to the present. A very effective technique for this is 4-7-8 breathing, popularized by Dr. Andrew Weil, which is also aligned with Stoic teachings on mind control. Here's how it works. Inhale for 4 seconds. Fill your lungs calmly and consciously. Hold your breath for 7 seconds. The focus here is to allow your mind to become calm and free of any impulses or thoughts that arise. Exhale for 8 seconds. Exhale gently, allowing your body to relax. This simple exercise helps to reduce physical and mental tension, promoting a state of calm and clarity. By practicing this breathing technique daily, we can begin to train our body and mind to react more calmly, rather than getting lost in distressing thoughts or impulsive reactions. Another important aspect of the Stoic practice of mindfulness is self-control. For the Stoics, True freedom lies not in changing external circumstances, but in how we control our own reactions. When we can focus our mind on the present moment and disconnect from the whirlwind of external thoughts and expectations, we can act with greater wisdom, empathy, and serenity. The concept of amor fati, which in Latin means to love fate, is one of the most profound and powerful ideas in Stoicism. This Stoic principle invites us to embrace everything that happens in our lives, both positive experiences and adversities, as an essential part of our path. Amor fati is not just a passive acceptance of what happens, but rather an active attitude of loving everything that life offers us, no matter how challenging it may be. Nietzsche, a modern philosopher influenced by the Stoics, wrote that amor fati was one of the greatest gifts one could cultivate, stating, "I want to live my life in such a way that if it were repeated endlessly, I would desire it the same way." This perfectly sums up the Stoic concept of amor fati. By adopting this philosophy, we come to accept and even celebrate hardships and obstacles as fundamental parts of our journey. For the Stoics, everything that happens, whether good or bad, is part of a larger, natural order. Marcus Aurelius, for example, believed that the reason things happen is part of a perfect cosmic plan, even if it may not be clear to us at first glance. By practicing amor fati, we are not just accepting what happens, but recognizing that each experience plays an important role in our growth and learning. This translates into our everyday lives in practical ways. When we face difficulties, whether it's illness, loss, or failure, instead of fighting what happened or lamenting what should have been different, we can practice amor fati. We can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I use this situation to grow? By doing this, we change our relationship with suffering and turn each challenge into an opportunity to learn. Amor fati does not mean being insensitive or indifferent to pain, but rather accepting that everything, including pain, is part of a larger journey. It frees us from frustration and resistance, allowing us to find serenity in any situation. Human relationships are one of the most challenging areas when it comes to finding inner peace. We become emotionally involved with the people around us, and often our expectations of how they should act, think, or behave cause us frustration, sadness, and anxiety. The concept of amor fati offers a Stoic way to approach these issues, helping us to accept others as they are, without trying to force or control their attitudes. Amor fati teaches us that, just as we must accept our destiny, we must also accept the people who cross our path, with their imperfections and flaws. Instead of expecting people to be different or to behave according to our expectations, we can begin to accept the characteristics of others, including the aspects that bother us. When we practice this acceptance, we begin to see others not as obstacles to our well-being, but as natural parts of our life path, with their own lessons to offer us. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, taught that we cannot control others, only our own reactions. This implies that when interacting with others, our inner peace should not depend on how they act or what they do, but on how we choose to react to them. If someone offends us, for example, we can choose to respond with understanding and compassion rather than anger or resentment. This shift in perspective comes from the deep understanding that the actions of others are part of their own destiny and not something we can directly control or change. Practicing amor fati in relationships also involves letting go of attachment to unrealistic expectations. Too often, we expect people to conform to a set of standards of behavior that we ourselves have created, which inevitably leads to disappointment. By accepting others as they are, with their strengths and weaknesses, we can improve our interactions with others, becoming more empathetic and understanding. Furthermore, amor fati can be instrumental in forgiving others and ourselves. If we accept that everyone is on their own path, with their own inner struggles, the ability to forgive becomes easier. When we do not take the actions of others personally, but as part of their own life process, we are able to cultivate a greater sense of peace and inner freedom. For the Stoics, virtue is a foundation of a good and peaceful life. True inner peace does not depend on external circumstances, but on our own ability to act virtuously, aligning our thoughts and actions with what is morally right and reasonable. The Stoics believed that virtue was sufficient to achieve happiness, and that peace of mind came not from the things we possess or the situations we face, but from the quality of our own conduct. Virtue, according to the Stoics, is made up of four main characteristics: wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. These are the cardinal virtues that, when practiced, allow us to live a full life, regardless of external circumstances. Let's explore each of these virtues and how they can help us cultivate inner peace. Wisdom. Stoic wisdom is the ability to perceive the truth of life and make rational decisions based on that perception. It involves the ability to distinguish what is within our reach and what is not, and to act accordingly. Wisdom helps us make more considered, less impulsive decisions, which in turn reduces anxiety and regret. By cultivating wisdom, we learn to see situations objectively and choose our actions with clarity. Courage. Stoic courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act correctly despite fear. It allows us to face challenges, make difficult decisions, and stand firm in our values, even when the road is difficult. Courage allows us to face adversity with dignity and not be discouraged by external difficulties. It is essential for finding inner peace in times of chaos, as it gives us the confidence to move forward, even in the face of life's uncertainties. Justice. Stoic justice is a virtue of treating others with respect and fairness, acting ethically and impartially. It calls us to live in harmony with others, promoting the common good and respecting the rights of others. By practicing justice, our inner peace is strengthened, because by acting with integrity, we free ourselves from the guilt and anxiety generated by unjust actions. Moderation. Stoic moderation is a virtue of controlling our desires and impulses. It teaches us to avoid excesses, whether in pleasure, consumption, or ambition. Moderation helps us maintain balance and serenity without being dominated by momentary desires or external pressures. By living in moderation, we cultivate a state of peace and contentment as we learn not to depend on external things for our happiness. By cultivating these four virtues, we become more resilient, more focused, and better able to maintain our inner peace regardless of external circumstances. True happiness and serenity come from within, from our ability to live according to the principles of virtue. Life is full of adversity, and as Stoicism itself teaches us, we cannot avoid difficulties. What we can control, however, is how we react to them. Stoic philosophy offers a clear path to facing any type of challenge, transforming each obstacle into an opportunity for growth. For Stoics, adversity is not something to be feared, but something to be used as a tool for learning and improvement. Facing adversity wisely means, first and foremost, accepting that challenges are part of life. In Stoic thought, there is no separation between what is good and bad, because events themselves are neutral. What determines our experience is how we choose to react to them. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote that life is what our thoughts make of it. This reflects the idea that, regardless of the circumstances, we can control our attitude and our interpretation of situations. When faced with a challenge, our first instinctive reaction may be despair, anger, or frustration. However, Stoic practice teaches us to look at these moments from a new perspective. They are opportunities to exercise our virtues. For example, if we are facing a crisis at work, we can use it as an opportunity to practice courage, facing the situation without fear, wisdom, making rational decisions without impulsiveness, moderation, not putting too much pressure on ourselves, and justice, dealing with others ethically and respectfully, even in difficult times. Furthermore, the Stoics emphasize the importance of keeping a broader perspective when faced with obstacles. When we face adversity, we are often so focused on the immediate problem that we forget to look at the bigger picture. Stoic philosophy reminds us that all things are temporary and that the difficulties we face today can be overcome over time, and by reflecting on them, we may even see that they have a greater purpose in our development. Every challenge we face has the potential to teach us something new. Whether it's a personal failure, a problem at work, a disagreement in a relationship, or an unexpected situation, we can always choose how we respond. If we choose to act with Stoic wisdom, we can turn adversity into an opportunity to grow, learn, and become stronger. Gratitude is one of the most powerful virtues we can cultivate to find inner peace, especially in times of adversity. While gratitude is often associated with appreciating the good things in life, Stoicism takes this practice a step further. For the Stoics, gratitude is not just about being thankful for blessings, but also about the opportunity to learn and grow from the challenges life presents us. In difficult times, it is easy to be tempted to focus only on the losses, frustrations, and difficulties. However, Stoicism invites us to see each situation, even the most painful ones, as an opportunity for reflection and learning. The practice of Stoic gratitude involves pausing and reflecting on what we can learn from each experience and how it contributes to our formation as wiser and more resilient human beings. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often practiced a type of gratitude that is central to Stoic philosophy. He expressed gratitude for the lessons life gave him, regardless of the circumstances. He recognized that hardships were an essential part of becoming a more virtuous and stronger person. He also expressed gratitude for his opportunities, for every person who crossed his path, and even for adversity, because he knew that these were sources of personal growth. The practice of Stoic gratitude is not a simple prayer or prayer of thanksgiving, but a daily exercise of noticing the good in the situations and people around us, especially when things seem difficult. This could include being grateful for an opportunity to learn something new, or even for a moment of calm in the midst of chaos. When we begin to practice this gratitude consciously, our perspective on life changes profoundly. A practical way to cultivate this Stoic gratitude is to start your day by reflecting. What can I learn from today? And why am I grateful to be alive and to be facing this moment? This simple but powerful practice helps us rewire our minds to focus on the positive, even in the midst of challenges, allowing inner peace to become more accessible. True inner peace is not something that can be achieved in isolated moments of meditation or reflection. It must be lived and applied throughout our daily actions. Stoicism teaches us that philosophy is not just for moments of introspection, but a way of living. Integrating inner peace into our daily actions is a constant exercise in aligning our intentions with our attitudes. Peace does not come from controlling the world around us, but from cultivating an inner tranquility that allows us to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation, regardless of the circumstances. One of the greatest Stoic teachings is that we should act according to our values, regardless of external pressures or difficulties. Instead of reacting impulsively or according to our emotions, we are encouraged to reflect before we act. When we integrate Stoic philosophy into our daily lives, we begin to see our actions as opportunities to exercise the virtues we have cultivated. For example, in a situation of conflict, we can choose to act with justice and moderation, maintaining calm and integrity. In a situation of challenge, we can act with courage, facing the problem with clarity and confidence, without giving in to fear. Another key to integrating inner peace into daily actions is mental discipline. This means cultivating the ability to observe our thoughts and emotions without identifying with them. When we feel anxious or stressed, we can remember that these emotions are just temporary responses to external stimuli, and that we have the power to choose how we react to them. This mental control is an essential aspect of Stoic philosophy, which teaches us not to be enslaved by circumstances, but to be masters of our own minds. To integrate inner peace into our actions, it is also essential to practice self-compassion. Being kind to ourselves and recognizing that we are all learning processes helps us to deal with failures and imperfections in a more peaceful way. The practice of Stoic self-compassion is a reminder that inner peace is not a straight or perfect line, but a constant path of effort and growth. Finally, integrating inner peace into our daily actions also involves acting with purpose. This means aligning our actions with our deepest values and goals, rather than following the tide of external expectations or momentary impulses. When our actions are aligned with our true essence, our inner peace becomes more solid and lasting because we know we are living with authenticity and integrity. Continuous self-reflection is one of the most important pillars of Stoic practice. For Stoics, living virtuously and achieving inner peace is not something that is achieved once and for all, but is a constant process of self-examination and improvement. Every action, every thought, and every reaction we have is an opportunity to reflect and adjust our behavior, attitude, and values in accordance with the principles of Stoic philosophy. The practice of self-reflection is deeply rooted in Marcus Aurelius' meditations, where he frequently questioned his own attitudes and actions and how he could act more virtuously. He recognized that constant reflection was a way to correct course when his actions were not aligned with his ideals of wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. Stoic self-reflection is not an exercise in destructive self-criticism, but rather a practice of objective and honest observation of oneself. It involves looking at our thoughts and actions in an unbiased way, without excessive judgment, but with the intention of learning and growing. Rather than harshly criticizing ourselves when we make mistakes, reflection allows us to identify where we can improve and how we can apply Stoic teachings in future situations. An effective way to practice self-reflection is to set aside time at the end of each day to review our actions and emotions. We can ask ourselves, what did I do today that was virtuous? Where could I have acted with more wisdom or restraint? How can I learn from the challenges I faced? These questions help us stay focused on our ongoing evolution and ensure that we are aligned with our values, even when circumstances test us. Self-reflection also involves being aware of our emotions and how they affect our decisions. Stoicism teaches that we should not be overwhelmed by our feelings, but rather observe them with discernment. Self-reflection helps us to recognize when we are being influenced by momentary emotions, such as anger or fear, and to make more rational and controlled decisions. By adopting the practice of continuous self-reflection, we not only improve our behavior, but we also strengthen our inner peace, as we maintain the awareness that we are in control of our mind and our actions. This continuous process of learning and adjustment allows us to live with greater authenticity and purpose. Death is one of humanity's greatest fears, but Stoicism teaches us to accept it as a natural part of existence. For the Stoics, serenity in the face of the end of life is not just a way of facing death calmly, but a fundamental practice for achieving inner peace. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, in his letters, often spoke about the inevitability of death and how it should be faced with dignity and acceptance. Instead of fearing death, we should learn to live intensely and wisely while we are alive, so that when the moment comes, we can face it with serenity. The Stoic view of death is simple yet profound. Death is part of the natural flow of life, and we should not fight it. As Seneca wrote, death is not an evil, but a natural phenomenon. What is bad is not having lived well until then. Understanding that death is inevitable and part of the natural cycle of things frees us from the fear it provokes. This allows us to live more fully and with more peace, knowing that our time is limited and that we must make the most of every moment. The Stoics recommend reflecting on death regularly so that we can appreciate life as it should be. This practice, often called memento mori, remembering that you will die, helps us maintain a clear perspective and avoid wasting time on futile worries or fears that have no basis in reality. When we remember that death can come at any moment, we learn to appreciate the present and live according to our highest values. By accepting death as part of the cycle of life, serenity becomes possible, even in the face of finitude. The inner peace we seek can be achieved not by trying to control or avoid death, but by learning to live fully and virtuously, knowing that the end is inevitable, but that our conduct until then is entirely up to us to choose. Furthermore, the Stoics emphasize the importance of preparing for death with dignity and courage. Rather than fearing the end, we should focus on living a life that reflects our deepest values. When we do this, death loses its power over us, and instead of causing us anxiety, it becomes simply a natural part of the human journey. And so we conclude our journey on how to find inner peace amidst chaos, using the teachings of Stoic philosophy As we have seen, Stoicism offers us powerful tools for dealing with anxiety, life's challenges, and even the inevitability of death, always reminding us that true peace comes from within, not from external circumstances. If you felt inspired by these teachings and want to continue learning more about how to apply Stoicism in your daily life to live with more balance and wisdom, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here, we regularly share content about Stoic practices, personal development, mental health, and much more. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Remember, inner peace is within your reach. Just practice and cultivate Stoic wisdom. See you there.